This is the Life Sciences Leadership Show. I'm your host, Michael Piperno, and I'm a leadership communication coach and facilitator who specializes in the life sciences industry. On each episode of this show, I interview industry leaders from organizations of all sizes about their leadership journeys. My goal for the show is to help you gain leadership insights and knowledge that'll help you in your own life sciences leadership journey. Okay, on with the show. Support for this episode is provided by Aplos Analytics. Aplos builds intuitive, secure, and lightning-fast cloud-based tools to automate and simplify pharmacokinetic analyses and reporting. Aplos can help your team reduce manual steps, improve consistency, and ensure compliance. Aplos supports non-clinical PK, toxicokinetic, and clinical pharmacology departments. Visit aplosanalytics.com, that's APLOS analytics.com, to see how you can simplify your pharmacokinetic analysis and reporting. Hey everyone, welcome to the show today. I'm so pleased to have a really special guest here today. I'm here with Zach Mercurio, and he's a researcher, a leadership development facilitator, and speaker, and he specializes in purposeful leadership, mattering, and meaningful work. Now, I met Zach several years ago. I think, Zach, I reached out to you on LinkedIn after I read your book, The Invisible Leader. I think that's how we got connected way back then. And Zach was very kind enough to come on my other podcast, the Leadership Communication Show. We had a great conversation about his work and purpose and mattering. And then Zach wrote another book, which I basically devoured last year when it came out. And that book's called The Power of Mattering: How Leaders Can Create a Culture of Significance. And audio people can't see, I'm holding up my Kindle version of the cover here right now. The book was, Zach, I have to say, probably my favorite book that I've read in a long time. And one of the reasons I really loved it is that so many of the things that you're talking about are things that I talk about a lot with clients, especially in the life sciences world. And everybody, we're going to get into what those things are in a minute. But your book really gave me just some wonderful stories and research and all of these things that help me further have these conversations about mattering and making people feel seen and heard, listening, empathy, compassion, all of those things that just come up so much in my leadership. So anyway, with all of that, I just want to pause here and say thanks so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. And I'm glad you had that experience. I mean, that was why I wrote the book, was to turn what's common sense into common practice.
Yeah.
Because for so long, we've called these skills, such as seeing people, hearing them, communicating their significance, reminding people how they're needed, connecting people to a bigger purpose. We've called these things soft. And anytime we see something as soft or simple, we're susceptible to an overconfidence bias. We think we're better at it than we are, and we approach it with less rigor. And I see that a lot. And so I'm glad that this helped you name some of these things for the people that you work with, because when we can name it, we can invest in it. When we can name it, we can change it. And that's the whole purpose of why I wrote the book, to name the skills that create a sense of significance.
Yeah. Well, and what I also loved about the book is how you wrote it, is that it seems like you always have a great story to tell about this concept you're about to introduce. And the story is one of those stories that, like, oh yeah, I can connect this story to a human and how they feel, or how they feel not seen, or that their work doesn't matter. Some of those stories are the type that give you a little lump in your throat when you read them, okay? And then after the story, or sometimes I guess the research comes first, then you give the research that you've done or other credible people have done that backs it all up, which I always like all those stats and everything. And I know my life sciences clients love the data. And then what I love is you take it from there. Okay, here's the story. Here's why it matters. Here's all the research that backs up what I'm about to tell you. Now here's how I'm going to tell you how to actually do this as a leader. I thought that was really, really brilliant how you did that over and over again.
Thank you for pointing that out, because the medium is the message, I guess, because when you think of that, it really gets into what we know about human motivation to do anything, which is that it's very hard for anything to matter to someone who doesn't feel that they matter or it matters.
Right.
And so the purpose of like opening with a story or a reflection question that allows people to bring it home for themselves allows you to really develop an internal belief that this matters. So you're likely to read on, because anything that I say, if I just started telling you to do things and you didn't believe that it mattered, it wouldn't matter to you. I mean,
Exactly.
this is a rule for human motivation. It's almost impossible for anything to matter to someone who doesn't believe that they or what they're doing matters.
Right.
And I think that is an important rule of communication as well.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, half the time, I mean, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching on general leadership communication and lots of different stuff, but I do a lot of presentation skills coaching and Q&A coaching. And one of the things that's really critical that people get right, especially when it's a very scientific presentation, is to get the story down, to tell a story, not just data dumped with a tsunami of data, and expect the audience to understand the story that you see in the data. And when you can ground that with what's all about patients in this industry, and when you can ground that with how this matters to patients, that's when people's ears perk up.
Or when you talk about, even though if it's a single data point, if you talk about one case and one participant and the changes of that one person and then abstract it back, because again, we have to feel that we're significant, that what we're doing, what we're paying attention to is significant. And so when you start something with connecting people to that significance, you actually start optimizing them to hear whatever comes later.
Yeah.
Because our brains and our bodies become optimized when we feel that what we're doing or what we're hearing or what we're participating in matters in some way.
Right.
Our stress levels go down. We actually become, with the neurotransmitters of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, all those things that connect our bodies to the things like mood, movement, motivation, all those things start lighting up when we have that instinct to be significant or to be a part of something that's significant met. It's a very important practice, but it takes skill. It's not just common sense. It doesn't just happen.
It takes skill and it takes time. It takes an investment. Now, it may not take a lot of time. Some of these things can be a lot of what you're talking about in your book, and how to make someone feel significant, or how to make sure that someone not only feel that they matter, that their work matters, or that their work is bringing value to the organization, and that they're valued. These things don't take 3 days to explain to someone or to make them feel. It happens in what I call those leadership moments, those micro moments where you take that extra time to say what needs to be said or to show what needs to be shown so that person can see and feel that they matter.
You know, and that can also be frustrating for people, maybe for listeners, because everybody wants a program or a platform or some new easy quick fix, really. I mean, like, for example, the employee recognition industry right now, it's like a $19 billion industry, the software industry. And this is software that allows people to like recognize people publicly, but people are actually feel more unvalued than ever, despite that rise in platforms, despite how connected we are. And when you say, actually, no, culture and the experience of working is actually built through the accumulation of small interactions. That's also a scary prospect, because then it means that your next great leadership act is really not the outcome of your clinical trial, but it's how you show up in your next interaction when you're a people leader. And the quality of those interactions actually determine the quality of care, the quality of product, the quality of the experiment or whatever you're working on. And that's overwhelming for leaders, because we're never, especially in technical fields, we're usually not taught with rigor how to show up and ensure people feel seen, heard, valued, and needed, how to ensure that they know how they and what they're doing adds value and makes a difference, being able to help them visualize the downstream impact of a task. We're not really taught how to do that. And so it can be overwhelming, but it's also liberating, because we have control over interactions. We always have interactional power. There's no red tape to showing up and seeing, hearing, valuing somebody.
There's not. You tell me, you're the researcher here. I throw this stat around like it's true, but it's just my gut. I mean, I have conversations with clients all the time especially clients who are brilliant. They know their stuff. They're at the top of their game with their position, with their knowledge. These are expert people, but they don't focus on how they make people feel in interactions and when they present and when they answer questions during Q&A. I've seen Q&A sessions go completely derailed and antagonistic that didn't have to be, if the presenter would have just honored how that person was feeling and their concern in the moment rather than getting defensive. So I talk to people I say leadership, I don't know, is it 40, 50% of how you make people feel? It's a lot. I think good leadership is a lot.
Leadership is relationships.
Right.
The quality of the leader is determined by the quality of his or her interactions.
Right.
Ultimately,
right.
The relationships. And no matter how much training, for example, a physician goes through, If the patient doesn't feel seen, heard, valued, or understood in that interaction, then all of that training is for naught. You actually don't get to be a physician. You don't get to deliver the service that you have spent all of these years educating yourself on. And, there's some interesting studies that find that when you ask physicians, how long do you allow your patient to speak before you interrupt?
Right.
They always say it's 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. And then when the Mayo Clinic has asked patients to rate their physicians on how long they speak before being interrupted, it's around 11 seconds. And so this just goes to show that, one, we have an overconfidence bias when it comes to these quote unquote soft things, but also your ability to justify your expertise, your ability to communicate your expertise, your ability to have your expertise actually be useful in the world is dependent upon the skills to ensure people feel seen, heard, valued, and needed by you. Because again, it doesn't matter what you know. It will not matter to someone who doesn't feel that they matter to you.
Right. Right. It's so simple, but it's so true, and so many people don't get that right.
Well, and it takes practice. It takes deliberate practice. Yeah. It takes deliberate skill building in an age, I would add, where we've lost these skills collectively. We have been texting back and forth now for about 25 years to the month. We sent our first text message, and we don't really realize it, but we've been able to digitally communicate with one another for 25 years, and we've gotten out of the social situations in which we would have normally developed these skills. Right. This is even more so in technical occupations in which you have how many project management platforms are you working on now, where if something's going wrong with the project, I can type into the chat a sad-faced emoji, say, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's check in next week. I don't actually have to sit with you, seek understanding, show compassion. Now imagine this. There's this concept in psychology. It's called skill decay. A skill decays. Meaning we get less proficient at it if we don't use it for about 4 days.
4 days?
So 4 days. Okay. So think about this. Think about how many times we haven't had to actively listening because we can get out of it using digital technology.
Totally.
Haven't had to show compassion. Haven't had to demonstrate understanding. Could just text somebody, hey, good job, instead of saying, hey, I'm really proud of you. I've seen your perseverance on that, and I want to let you know that it's noticed. Every time we get out of those social repetitions, we lose the skill. And here we are, where the majority of people and the majority of workplaces feel unseen, unheard, undervalued, and disengaged. And it's not a coincidence that it's tied to our erosion of the skills, the interpersonal skills, to see, hear, value people.
It's funny because, and I'm always preaching a lot about the value of in-person interaction and face-to-face, because empathy, number one, is easier face-to-face. And what you just talked about, when you sent a text-based or computer-based communication can be construed in many different ways without the richness and the benefit of body language, tone of voice, the empathy, and the ability for that person to read the compassion or no compassion in that interaction. When we don't do those things when we should be, we're stripping so much of our communication toolkit out of the equation.
And everybody talks about what's happening to the interaction.
Right.
But I want to talk about what's happening to us.
Yes.
Which is that we lose the social repetition, which is needed to develop a social skill.
Interesting. Yeah.
And every time we get out of these interactions, we lose the social repetition that's necessary to develop the social skill.
Right.
And here we are at a time where AI is taking over a lot of our operational skills. And so what are we left with? Well, I mean, the surefire way to become irrelevant in the age of AI is to not have the skills to create caring and trusting relationships.
Yeah.
And we're losing them in a time where we need them most, in a time where people are craving trusting relationships. People are questioning whether they matter, whether their work matters. And so that's why I really believe that there's a massive upskilling that needs to happen for ourselves and the people around us to relearn how to be human to one another, which starts with the most basic human instinct, which is the instinct to know that we and what we're doing matters.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of it's one of the things I've struggled with here, because what you're talking about with kind of losing some of those relationship skills. I'm in my 50s. I'm Gen X. I grew up with without a lot of that, and then have adapted over time. Yeah, I like to send a good text, but I like to try to make sure that I also give that call or have that face-to-face or have that dinner and, to build the relationship. A lot of people will come at me and say, well, those younger generations that have always had those, they've adapted. That's how they communicate. They never pick up the phone. They don't even check their voicemail. And I, as a communication coach and facilitator, I keep trying to find a way to respect that's how they prefer to communicate and that works for them. But then I sit here and my gnawing in my gut about what you just said is that I feel like there's a deficit here in the human connection that comes with the body language, tone of voice being together.
Yes, you cannot automate or replicate human care and human trust.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at.
2D. You can't, care cannot happen in two-dimensional space.
Right. Yeah.
Human care happens in 3 dimensions, when we're with each other. And it can happen virtually. We can be with each other virtually.
Right.
For example, when we're not, here's what typically happens is everybody has their cameras off on a virtual call or virtual presentation. Someone's frustrated on the call and then someone just clicks leave. The leader clicks leave and then says, oh, I'll deal with that. I don't have to think about you anymore. When I click that red button on Zoom, it's a person walking out the door.
Right, yeah.
So if we're in a meeting and you're frustrated on that call, I can click leave and I don't have to think about you till next week when we talk again. That's not normal. That's not normal human communication, because if we were in person and in a conference room and you were frustrated, guess what? I would have to talk to you about it. And I would, because I'm a human being and I have empathy and we're naturally built to be compassionate and to seek resolution. But our use of technology has made it easier to be inhumane with each other.
Right.
To go against what we're wired. And so we're losing that. But there's ways to get it back. Like, for example, if you're frustrated on a call, a video call, leaders that I've seen who are actually restoring this sense of mattering will call you after and say, hey, Michael, I noticed you were frustrated. Is that right?
Yeah.
Just opening up the space to have the real conversation is the skill that just being able to get out of it in 2D communication and text messages does not allow you to have, because you control everything. You can control when you respond.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if that's just how Gen Z communicates, well, if Gen Z is responsible for a project in which someone has an idea that's different from their own, they have to know how to seek understanding, how to seek resolution, how to build consensus, how to make that person feel valued in real time. And if they've only been responding to text messages when it's convenient for them, they've lost the skill to do that.
That's right. Yeah.
Which is why, again, as people become leaders in organizations, which is why I think is partly responsible for why so many people feel disengaged, feel invisible at work. I mean, there was a work human study that found that 30% of people felt quote unquote invisible or flat out ignored at work. I don't think that there's leaders out there that are like, oh, I want to render people invisible, or I want to be a caring leader today.
Right.
I think that we've lost the skills to care, and we have lost the skills to build high quality relationships and interactions at a time when those skills are needed more than ever.
Yeah. On the topic of care, one of the quotes that I highlighted and wrote a note to myself to come back to is about caring. And I want to read it to you because I want my listeners to hear about it, because it really struck me. So many leaders say they care about their people, but there's a difference between caring about people and caring for them. It's easy to care about someone. We can do it at a distance. Caring about someone is a sentiment. Caring for someone means we must understand them. To understand people, we must get up close and create the space to see them for who they truly are and ensure they feel heard. We must notice them. I thought that was really beautifully put. And that struck me at the time when I read it. I was like, oh gosh, yeah, like all the moments from my life were coming back. Like, oh yeah, that person said they cared, but they didn't make me feel cared for.
Yeah.
It's such a difference.
Yes, and I think this relates especially to the listeners here, because if you have a project team, for example, and you need them to care, we can't expect people to care if they don't feel cared for. I mean, that's a principle in psychology. It's very hard for people to care about anything if they don't first feel cared for. In many businesses, many organizations, we've had this subconscious belief that people should be valued once they add value. Mm-hmm. So once people care enough and produce great work, we should value them through a promotion, more money, a bonus, an incentive, an award. But psychologically, it's always been the opposite. People add value in proportion to how much they feel valued. People care in proportion to how much they feel cared for. But that's right. The difference between caring about people is we care about our people. Our people are our greatest asset. It's easy to do that. But when you're caring for someone, when you're caring for anything, for example, I just got this bonsai tree.
Huh?
That's my like midlife hobby.
That's your new, okay.
Right?
I
to care
cars,
for this
so
tree, I have to
better...
care for this tree thing. I have to understand. I have the thing of fertilizer right next to it on my desk. I have to understand how much light it needs, how much water it needs. I have to be attentive. Like if its leaves are withering, it needs water. Like you can't care for something you don't understand.
Yeah.
You can't care for a person you don't understand. You can't. There's no shortcut for understanding. It takes time, it takes intention, and it takes skill. And with all of our metrics and platforms that are telling us how behind we are in our projects and our failures and our shareholder pressures and all of the things happening in the world, it's really causing a hurry addiction. And hurry and care can't coexist. So we need to have the skills to slow down, to pay attention, to seek understanding, to make sure people feel cared for, make sure people feel valued so that they can add value. And to the projects, the patients, the people that we're working to serve.
Hurry and care can't coexist. I love that.
It can't. I can't just brush by and hope that somehow I'll be transmuted with the knowledge I need to take care of this bonsai tree. I have to like sit down and read about it. I mean, I had I had to get the guy who I got it from a white truck on the side of the street, just said bonsai on it. The guy had to text me this, like all of this information. I had to sit down. It's like a big deal, right? And I had to text him back, like, well, what do I do about this? I had to seek understanding. And I think it's a good metaphor and analogy to the fact that if we want, we can't lead people we don't understand. We can't serve people we don't understand. We can't care for people we don't understand. And so what I'm talking about when we talk about the skills to see, hear, value, and show people how they're needed, I'm talking about these skills to understand people.
Right. Yep. And I think earlier when in our chat, you were talking about how sometimes these concepts can feel a little bit overwhelming and things like that. I think one of the things I notice is that sometimes people don't do these things because they're afraid that they won't get it right or perfect. And I know the fear of imperfection is pretty rampant throughout many industries, but I know a lot of people struggle with that. And what I always tell clients is, well, it's better to make people feel seen and heard and understand how you make people feel, even if you're not perfect at it, than to not be having that on your radar and not doing the work.
This is good. So that's one barrier that I see all the time is people want to get it right. That's not the point at all. I mean, I screw this up all the time. I mean, I don't wake up in the morning and start affirming everybody around me. I'm like, no, what do I got to do today? Right. It's like,
you have your magic wand, right?
I do things like on my one-on-ones, I add at the top of my list just this line. I said, don't forget to ask about ...
Yeah.
I put things in my environment to remember to notice something about that person and ask them about it. Like I really wanted to know about your pivot on this podcast. And I wrote it down. I had it written down right here before we got on, right? So that little extra time to then trigger yourself to ask that question or to seek that data, that's what I'm talking about. It's these very small micro practices. In fact, the practices exist because I know I won't get it right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Same with me. Yeah. No, I'm the same. I won't remember. I won't always remember.
Absolutely.
No way. Yeah.
So think about it that way. These skills, these practices actually exist because you probably won't get it right.
Probably not. Yeah. You probably won't.
That's why the airplane pilot has that checklist that they go over every time. Even though they've flown thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, the weather that day is going to be different. There's all these external variables. You may have an angry customer. You may have delays you're dealing with. The checklist makes sure that all of that stuff doesn't take you away from the essentials to fly the airplane safely. But when you have these human skills and when you approach them with rigor, when you have practices that remind you to notice, affirm, show people how they're needed, it doesn't allow the external pressures to take over. It allows you to intentionally govern how you show up.
Right. Yep. And let's talk about the time on doing these things. It didn't take you a lot of time to write down that reminder, but you did it, and you were intentional about doing it. You have a great story in your book about a physician and patient interaction that was videoed, and one example was, it was a physician giving a cancer diagnosis, and there was the normal conversation, and then there was another second version where the physician was more empathetic, took the time to honor the concerns of the patient, acknowledge that there's no easy decision here. And what struck me with that example was The second video, which was proven to be more effective, the patients were less anxious and the physicians got higher ratings. It was 40 seconds.
40 seconds. Yes,
That's
not
all
only
it took.
not only that did the physician get higher ratings, but the participants who were in the study watching the videos had objectively lower stress levels. Watching.
Yeah, watching.
Now we're talking about culture.
Right.
Because it was watching, and what it was is the physician who was giving the diagnosis, one of the things they did was they just lightly put their hand on the person's shoulder.
Okay.
And the other person didn't, but said the same words. And for just that one gesture, dramatically different. There's studies that show that for instead of giving someone an opioid, before a procedure. I don't know if you caught this in the book, but researchers had the anesthesiologist come in and talk about any concerns that the person had.
Yep.
The control group didn't. And then they measured their objective pain levels after the procedure. And the group that had the anesthesiologist come in for a short conversation to allay their fears actually had objectively lower perceptions of pain than people given a strong opiate.
It's unreal. It's almost
And
unbelievable.
it's from this book called Compassionomics. Compassionomics.
Okay.
I highly recommend it. It's by two MDs. It's about the physical and mental effects of feeling seen, feeling that someone knows your struggle, and feeling that someone's there to help, which is part of feeling that you matter. So I highly recommend that book, especially for this audience, Compassionomics.
Yeah. How did you get into this work that you're doing so beautifully right now? Like, what was your intro to it, and how did you build it into what you have today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I didn't feel that I mattered in my early career. I was in advertising, totally different career. And I saw the people around me that I could just tell that they didn't feel that they mattered. And the signals of that were people would not share much. There would be not a lot of energy for the work, not a lot of excitement. I mean, they were making a lot of money, but people were living for the weekend. I mean, it was just this, we would see customers and clients as just mere means to an end. And it was this, like, you could feel it. And I just didn't have any sense of mattering. But then I talked to just random people around Washington, D.C., whether it's bus drivers or cab drivers. And I would do this informal study. I would just ask them what they like about their jobs. And you would just see certain people light up. You know those people. Like if you have a delivery driver that is just always happy to see you, lights up. And I became obsessed with how do you develop that perspective. And one of the things that I found when I was asking them is they didn't talk about what they did. They talked about who they did it for. They didn't talk about how hard their job is. They talked about who supports them in their job or why they're doing the job. And that's what led me into the work on purpose. And then I started doing research on the experience of meaningfulness, experiencing work as purposeful and significant with janitors. And in that study, we found that it wasn't the work, it wasn't the pleasurable nature or the unpleasant nature of the work that made a difference. The janitors that thrived had regular moments where people, building user, leader, saw them, heard them, reminded them of their significance, showed them that they mattered. These small moments of mattering. And since then, we surveyed thousands of people on when they most feel that they matter, when their work is meaningful, when they're most motivated, on what their leaders are doing. And no surprise, we never saw anybody say, oh, when I got a promotion, when I got more money, when our project was successful, when we got a good quarterly earnings report. No one talked about big actions. They all talked about small interactions. In which money, awards didn't even rank. The top things were like, someone asks about my personal life. Someone can name my unique gifts and strengths relative to others on my team. Someone regularly shows me how my tasks today are essential for some bigger purpose. My leader regularly shows me the downstream impact of my work. Shows me gratitude. When they give critique, they demonstrate their belief and support with me, right?
Yeah.
All of these things are available in your next interaction. And then, as more and more people started feeling undervalued, unseen, especially from the pandemic, me and another fellow researcher, we were like, well, I mean, there's a name for this. It's called mattering. It happens in these small moments. There's skills we can relearn to do it. And that's what led to this work that we're talking about.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Soma. I could talk to you for another half hour to an hour about all these other topics from your book, but I do want to just kind of wrap us up here by, number one, personally thanking you for something you told me a couple years ago, and it showed up in your new book, The Power of Mattering, as well, so I'm just kind of bringing it full circle. And I don't know if it was on the last podcast we did together, if it was just one of our one-on-one chats, but you gave me the phrase, if it weren't for you. And that's a phrase that I've, of course, used in the past casually and everything, but it's become a reminder and a mantra for me, both in my personal and professional relationships, to stop, notice, and say it when you see that. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have had that kind of engagement at that workshop. If it weren't for you, whatever. It's simple words, but it's so powerful as a reminder of how you can make people feel that they matter.
Absolutely. You know, if anybody's thinking, well, what do I do with this conversation?
Right.
I would say the first thing is to think of someone you rely on, whether it's on your teams or the people around you, and think about the last time you've told them explicitly. Normally there's a gap there. And if you think of that person, tell them, you don't have to use the phrase if it weren't for you, but just say, hey, I just want to let you know, I was listening to this. You can blame it on me if you're uncomfortable, or blame it on us. I was listening to this podcast. They're talking about people that we rely on. I thought of you. Just wanted to let you know that. And see what happens to that relationship. Another thing that you can do is to just ask the people around you, ask your team, ask the people in your organization, when you feel that you matter to me, what am I doing? When you feel that you matter here, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And really listen, because it's going to be surprising. It's not going to be what you think. It's going to be the small things, and write those things down and do more of those things. I mean, that's the easiest way to start all of this.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Listen, Zach, tell everybody how they can learn more about you. Of course, I'm going to put your website and the book in the show notes, but tell people how they can get in touch with you, find out more about you.
Yes. So you can go to zachmercurio.com, but go to the tab says Learn, click Mattering. Everything's there. Workbooks, worksheets, templates. If you want to learn more about this, you can just take it and use it. And if you like that, then you can read the book, but you can start there. And then also I'm on LinkedIn. I really have a good LinkedIn community of real leaders in a lot of different industries who are trying to take this on. I'm at Zach Mercurio there, so I'd like to see you there.
Zach, always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
All right. Thanks for listening to the show today. If you enjoyed it, please rate it on your favorite podcast platform and tell one colleague or friend about it. Thanks. We'll see you next time. The Life Sciences Leadership Show is brought to you by the Comvia Group, experts in leadership communication coaching and training for life sciences leaders. Learn more at www.wearecomvia.com. That's WEARARE, Comvia, COMVIA.com.